Off the coast of Scotland lies a chain of islands known as the Flannan Isles. On the largest of these islands, called Eilean Mor, stands a lighthouse. No one tends this lighthouse anymore, as it was fully automated in 1971. The place is desolate and isolated from modern life. Despite Eilean Mor being quite large, no one lives there. This isolation has made many people forget that for over 70 years, groups of people regularly visited the island to tend to the lighthouse. It was this challenging, human-powered operation that led to a mysterious incident in December 1900, just 1 year after the lighthouse became operational. The incident remains controversial to this day. The keepers of the Flannan Isles lighthouse disappeared without a trace. The lighthouse on the Flannan Isles began construction in 1895, designed by David Stevenson, and was handed over to the Northern Lighthouse Board for operation. Completed in 1899, it sits atop a steep cliff and still stands strong to this day. Although the lighthouse gave Eilean Mor a new, picturesque appearance, it couldn't erase the island's long-standing, eerie reputation. The harsh weather is the first thing people remember, as the treacherous seas surrounding the island were a major reason for building the lighthouse. Additionally, many believe that something abnormal existed on the island. This may stem from the ruins of St. Flannan's Chapel, which had stood there for centuries. There were rumors that the builders abandoned the chapel shortly after completing it, having suffered terrible torment at the hands of demonic creatures living on the island. Stories of tiny creatures called Lusburden were frequently told by locals, who warned that if one wasn't careful, they'd be enchanted and forced to perform strange rituals for these beings. With so many odd rumors surrounding the island, Eilean Mor was clearly not a place people wanted to visit. Thus, the lighthouse keepers had an incredibly difficult job, stuck in complete isolation day after day, with no company except possibly the supernatural entities of the island. The mysterious disappearance. At the end of December 1900, James Duckett, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur were assigned to care for and operate the lighthouse. James was the head keeper, Thomas was the second assistant, and Donald was the first assistant, temporarily replacing William Ross, who was on sick leave. The fourth keeper, Joseph Moore, had left for his holiday earlier that month. On December 26th, when his leave ended, he boarded the ship Hesperus, captained by Jim Harvey, and headed for Eilean Mor. The Hesperus usually visited the island every 2 weeks, bringing supplies and rotating keepers. As usual, the journey started smoothly, with good weather and clear visibility. However, as Hesperus neared the island, a sense of unease grew among the crew. From afar, the lighthouse appeared suspiciously abandoned. There was no signal flag flying. First, the ship's whistle sounded, then a flare was fired from the deck, but there was no response from the 3 lighthouse keepers on the island. Unbeknownst to them at the time, it had been over a week since the last message had been sent by the keepers. After landing, Joseph quickly headed toward the lighthouse to investigate, while McCormick, the ship's first mate, and some crew members stayed behind to guard the small boat they had used to reach shore. Upon arrival, Joseph found both the entrance gate and the lighthouse door shut. Inside, the fireplace was cold, and the living quarters were empty. The lighthouse itself was well maintained, with clean lamp lenses, full water tanks, and neatly drawn curtains, but there was no sign of James, Thomas, or Donald. Joseph wrote a report describing the eerie scene. In the following days, a formal investigation began, covering the entire lighthouse on Eilean Mor. This revealed further strange details. On the eastern landing of the island, a box containing mooring ropes stored in a crevice in the rocks along the concrete path to the pier was missing, with some of the ropes found scattered on the rocks below. Some iron railings were also broken. Strangely, all the clocks inside the lighthouse had stopped, but these clues provided no explanation for the disappearance of the 3 keepers. More thorough investigations were conducted by Senior Officer Robert Muirhead and his assistants. Robert's report from his first trip to the island on January 8, 1901, added some new information. Both Joseph and Robert believed that James and Thomas must have been wearing boots and raincoats when they left, as these items were not found anywhere inside the lighthouse. However, oddly, Donald's outdoor coat was still hanging inside. Robert also noted that the final entry in the lighthouse log, made on the morning of December 15th, stated that the maintenance tasks for the light and the lantern room had been completed that day. Additionally, whoever had been cooking that day had finished their work, as the kitchen pots and pans were clean and tidy. These strange details only deepened the mystery until a new clue unexpectedly surfaced. What happened? Around midnight on December 15th, the steamship Arctur passed by Eilean Mor and saw the lighthouse in darkness. The situation was alarming because lighthouse keepers were never permitted to let the light go out, especially given the weather conditions at that time. The ship immediately reported the incident to the Northern Lighthouse Board. However, the report was lost due to the bureaucratic inefficiency of the time, and it wasn't found until 10 days after Hesperus had discovered the situation. Based on the ship's log and the Arctur's report, the terrible event that befell the keepers likely occurred on December 15th, sometime between morning and midnight. It's hard to imagine how things would have unfolded if the management had received the warning and acted promptly. Perhaps the fate of the keepers would have been different, or more conclusive evidence might have been found before it was erased by the wind and sea, allowing an explanation to be discovered. Senior Officer Robert Moorhead, after extensive investigations, provided an explanation for what had happened to the victims, which remains the most plausible theory to this day. He used the detail of the large rock as evidence, proving that the enormous waves caused by stormy seas were powerful enough to sweep away anything, let alone the small bodies of the three victims. In this theory, it is believed that James and Thomas were wearing raincoats and waterproof boots when the storm hit and went to the west dock to secure a rope box. Donald might have rushed out without his coat in response to their call for help. Sadly, all three were swept away by the ferocious waves. God above all. Although this hypothesis seems reasonable, there are still other stories and supernatural or mysterious explanations, passed down by those who don't believe Moorhead's account. Some speculate that the three victims might have decided to leave the harsh island and boarded a passing ship to escape. Others believe that isolation took a toll on them, leading to arguments and a physical fight near the cliff, causing them to fall into the sea. There are even suggestions that they were captured by government spies or strange sea creatures like giant black birds, or that they were simply taken to another world by ancient, mystical beings believed to live on the island. However, all of these theories lack any solid evidence to support them. The few details used to bolster these claims are said to come from reports by Joseph Moore and Robert Moorhead during their investigations. But these stories are largely fabricated and are not mentioned in any of their official records. For instance, it's often said that Joseph found an overturned chair and an unfinished meal in the kitchen. However, this detail is absent from Joseph's report, and it's important to remember that Senior Officer Robert clearly stated the kitchen was spotless and orderly. These embellishments likely originated from a poem written by Wilfred Gibson and published in 1912, dramatizing and fictionalizing the event. The poem also led people to believe that three giant black birds flew from the top of the lighthouse when Joseph approached it. Another strange detail that many people naively believed in later analyses was the mysterious last entries in the lighthouse's logbook, allegedly written by Thomas Marshall. It's due to these supposed mysterious logbook entries that some supporters of supernatural theories believe the keepers turned against each other, leading to their deaths. However, all of these claims are fabricated. As historian Mike Dash noted in his thorough investigation, the actual logbook only recorded entries until December 13, according to records from the Northern Lighthouse Board and reports from that time. The entries from December 13th to December 15th were written in chalk on a slate board, with the intention of being copied into the logbook later. Moreover, thanks to Robert's report, we know exactly what was written in the last entry on December 15th, which was written by James Duckett, not Thomas Marshall. These entries contain no mentions of anger, crying, or praying. Robert found that the records were simply a statement that the work for December 15th had been completed. In his research, Mike Dash also identified the person responsible for the mysterious logbook entries, John Spivak, writing under the pen name Ernest Fallon. Spivak included them in a short story he penned for a magazine titled True Strange Stories in 1929. It can be confirmed that the mysterious details mentioned above are entirely fictional. But even after dismissing these fabrications, we must accept the fact that Robert's plausible hypothesis remains just a theory. Perhaps we will never know what truly happened to the unfortunate keepers, given the passage of time and the fact that their remains were never found. They may still lie deep beneath the tumultuous waves of the sea, or perhaps they are still trapped in the shadows of Eilean Mor, unable to leave.